Thank you very much. Before anything, thank you for the invitation on behalf of the National Institute for Transparency. It's a long name in Spanish. It's the last part is the important part, which is protection to personal data. I have been listening to what you have heard, and everything concerns the flows of data and what can be done with the data. And we're interested in the protection of personal data. From the perspective of the Institute, it's important to highlight that we have realized that there is a problem of compliance in terms of law. That is, there are some elements that must be complied with, and the Institute has been addressing with this type of matters that must remember that it has a validity from 2012, and in the last week now that Mexico is part of the 108 agreement of the protection of the personal data in Europe. This has taken a new density. So we must take into account that in Mexico, we're assuming the protection of personal data as a fundamental right, and as such, the compliance with it has been very inquisitive at some point, and I'm bringing some figures here so I can tell you where we are headed as an institute. Whilst the way in which we review personal data was in printed or physical ways, the institute now is going through digital pages. That is, e-commerce is now part of some research. How was this born? From the agency, the Consumer Protection Attorney's Office. Well, we have some e-commerce that was not protecting personal data, and well, why? Because they were not considering a notice of privacy. So we started to investigate 74 pages to see how they were conducting this e-commerce and whether effectively there was a violation of personal data, if they had conducted the verifications, and if at those verification it was determined that we had to start some penalty procedure for some of them. And what do I mean? Well, of compliance, first of all, none of which had privacy notices. We have to take into account that privacy notices is a way in which we're going to tell the consumer or the person what the management and the use of their personal data is going to be. Of course, we have to tell them why we need them, and we have to obtain their consent at some cases if the data are going to be transferred. So we noticed that there is a lot of confusion sometimes in terms of consent when it is obtained for electronic purchase in an e-commerce, in an e-retail, and then a consent to transfer personal data and the use that we can have to receive some sort of publicity used on those pages. Quite evidently, these sanction procedures are still ongoing for some of these pages, but I wanted to give you an example that the Institute is headed this way, and it is looking for a compliance with the basic principles of personal data protection. So this is not about preventing e-commerce, but it's about a matter of compliance with the Mexican legislation. And from the signature of the agreement with Europe, now this is a valid norm. And sometimes in Mexico, the figures have been kind of lost, and it's so that there hadn't been penalties in the sector in terms of the use or transfer of personal data. And just to highlight this, we have had penalties in Mexico for the misuse of personal data in Mexico, and the main penalties are because of lack of privacy notice, that we are not complying with this, and of course the use and transfer of data number. And now just to give you some numbers, the sectors with the highest number of fines that have been given our financial and insurance services, 223, $274 million, mass media, 53 million, 734, and for a total of 26 million, of course, many in which are in litigation, firms that have been paid to the state, and we have 42 million pesos in here that effectively have been collected. Now, we have to start from a point. The fact that they are being sanctioned, and because of some procedure errors, this can be modified or not. Well, this is, like the e-commerce or transfer data as companies, well, they have to give that plus to the consumers in terms of the personal protection data. We have to personal data protection. So we must see this as a way of protection and not as a fundamental right to safeguard customers. I would leave everything here, and maybe we can go in further detail later on. Thank you very much.